Well, welcome everyone to our week 4, our final session of Photoshop. And you guys have been a fantastic class. I love this group. You guys have been turning in phenomenal projects, and I'm so proud of you all. And I know that as you guys go on into the program and go on to the more difficult classes, you are going to continue to turn in awesome projects. So give yourselves a pat on the back for making it this far. I know you guys have had a lot of fun. I've seen some really creative and really clever animal composite projects from week 3. And I was really, really happy to see just you guys coming out of week 3 with so many good grades. My goal, like I've said, is for each and every one of you to get an A in the class. And just let me know what I can do to facilitate that. If you are like borderlining on, you're starting to get into like the B range, maybe because you forgot to submit a JPEG file, you submitted a PSD file or something. Reach out to me, contact me, and I'm going to be more than happy to have you resubmit that assignment so that you can, bump that rubric up and turn that B into an A, because it's really important for these, beginning level classes in graphic arts. To start out strong, start out with a really good grade so that you can kind of carry that momentum into your next classes, into your harder classes. So anyway, you guys are doing fabulous. So thank you so much for turning your assignments in on time, for following directions really well, and for reaching out to me and asking questions and showing up to my multi-sessions. It's been a real pleasure having you guys all as students. And going into week 4, this is, I would say this is probably the easiest week because, you're not really learning so much new as you are taking the skills that you have acquired during these past 3 weeks and then synthesizing them into your own original project, where you get to make your own poster, and it's very open-ended. You could choose any issue you want as long as it's some kind of social issue. And you are making something that will hopefully be a portfolio piece for you. That means you're showing off your skills. You're showing off your ability to composite images. You're showing off your ability to make adjustments, to design things. And we're going to utilize some typography for this assignment as well. So we're going to have a little bit more practice with the type tool. I'm going to jump right into teaching you guys how to do this assignment and explaining what's going to be required of you. Does anyone have any questions before I begin? And feel free, if you guys have any questions at any point during this class, feel free to go ahead and post it in the chat. One thing that I want to make sure that I mention is this week is the final week. I know I've mentioned it before, but this is really important. Saturday, midnight Mountain Time is the deadline. That means that Saturday, midnight Mountain Time, you will be cut off from the classroom. You will no longer have any access to the class, and you will not be able to submit anything past midnight Mountain Time on Saturday. So if you are in the process of uploading a assignment, and you let's say it's 11 o'clock, and you are in the process of uploading an assignment, you will, and let's say that assignment is taking a long time to upload, you will get cut off from the class at midnight. So you will no longer have the opportunity to finish uploading if you are in the middle of an upload while midnight strikes. So that's why it's really, really important to turn your work in early this week. And something else that we need to keep in mind is it's Thanksgiving, and many of you are doing things for Thanksgiving. Maybe you are traveling on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, and maybe you have a 4-day weekend from work, so you're taking advantage of that. That's why I really want to encourage you to get this assignment done before you do any traveling for the holidays or before you go to Thanksgiving, okay? So if possible, you guys, turn in your assignment on Thursday, or not Thursday, Tuesday. Turn your assignment in on Tuesday so that you can then go into your 3 or 4 day weekend enjoying the Thanksgiving break and not having to worry about your assignments. Okay, so you guys are going to turn in your work on Tuesday. So that means tomorrow. And so a really good idea would be to come into my multi-session tomorrow and show me your project so that you can get my eyes on it, get my feedback on it before you turn it in, so you can turn it in knowing that you're going to get a good grade. And then something else to keep in mind, usually I have a multi-session on Thursdays, but it's Thanksgiving, so we all have a holiday, so there will no longer be a multi-session on Thursday. So Tuesday is your last chance to get feedback from me on your assignment. So please do make sure that you come to my multi-session on Tuesday to get assistance or get eyes and feedback on your assignment. Okay, good job. Okay, let's go into talking about your assignment this week. So we're gonna, a really important aspect of this assignment, and I apologize if I'm gonna cough a few times because I'm still getting over this cold, is that you're gonna be required to turn in 2 files. One file that is meant for print and one file that is meant for the web. So you're gonna be turning in a JPEG as well as a PDF, and I'm going to explain in super detail how to properly save those files. So make sure that you have a piece of paper handy and that you write down the instructions as I go through them for how to save your files, okay? Write down the instructions for how to save the files. And this is really important because this is something that you're going to be able to use in your careers as graphic designers, because you're going to have to make stuff for the web and you're going to have to make stuff for print, and you need to know the difference between how to save something that's for the web versus how to save something for print. We want to utilize the principles of design in our project this week. So we're going to talk about those so that we can make a high quality, professional looking design piece. And we're going to talk about using the grid in Photoshop, which is a great way to make a professional looking layout. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go into the classroom and really quickly show you the rubric for how you're going to be graded on this assignment. And so that way you can make sure that you do it correctly. Okay, so we're going to go into week 4. This is week 4 right here. And really important, you have 2 things that are due in week 4. Your assessment and your career integration quiz. And your career integration quiz is worth 15 points. And so I know that doesn't seem like very many points, but that is 15 points. That could, if you're on a borderline, that could be a difference between an A and a B. So make sure that you take that quiz. It's really easy. You answer 3 questions and you don't have to memorize anything. Super, super easy. Oh my goodness, I did not put the rubric in here. Let me add the rubric really quick to our final poster assignment. There we go, now it's in here. So what you're gonna be doing is making a poster. And this poster is going to be like a social issue poster. And it's going to be on either an environmental, a political, or a social issue. So what are some examples of an environmental or political or social issue? How about recycle? You could make a poster for recycling. Political, you could make a poster for, make sure to vote. Voting is important. Call your representatives, that sort of thing. For social, you could make a poster, stop animal abuse, feed the homeless, yep, definitely. You can, Alexandria, those are great topics for a poster. And what you have to do is come up with a slogan for whatever issue it is that you're making a poster about. So you are welcome to utilize the many slogans related to those topics that are out there. Something about equal rights. That would be, equal rights now. That would be a very simple, excellent slogan. And then you're going to come up with a design for that topic, and you're going to make it like a poster. It's very, very important, and this is the part where you really, really want to pay attention and jot this down. You guys should definitely be taking notes, but jot this down. You have to have 3 photographic elements in your poster. So that means, what's a photographic element? A photographic element is something that is created with a camera. So an illustration is not a photographic element. A piece of clip art is not a photographic element. A map is not a photographic element. A graphic design is not a photographic element. A photographic element is something that is created with a camera, something that's actual real life. And you're going to take 3 photographic elements and combine them together using compositing into your poster. Yep, definitely. Yeah, Alexandria, those are great. So think about going on Google and doing a search for some slogans. Think about I'm not coming up with slogans off the top of my head, but brainstorm a lot of slogans, and I'm going to show you how you can go about researching and coming up with ideas in just a moment. Now, it's really, really important that you pay attention to the size of this poster. You're going to be making a poster that is 11 inches by 17 inches. And because it's meant for print, you're going to originally make it at 300 DPI and in CMYK mode. Okay, 300 DPI in CMYK mode. And it says that, of course, you're going to save it as a PDF, but that's not PSD, but that's not what you're turning in. You're not turning in a PSD. You're going to be turning in a PDF and a JPEG. And if you're unclear about that, look at the rubric. The rubric says here that you're turning in a PDF, and that's going to give you 20 points. And a JPEG, that's going to give you 25 points. So if you forget to turn in the PDF and the JPEG, you could lose out on 45 points. Again, that's the difference between an A and a C, okay? So it's really, really important that you turn in the correct file types. The rubric says 3 photographic elements used. So that means 3 things that are created with a camera, not graphics or clip art. And yeah, you're welcome to make as many posters as you want. Visual hierarchy, this is the order in which your eye moves through the design. So is there one element that's most important, that's most captivating to the eye, and then one element that's secondary? Mood, so is there a clear visual feeling to your piece? Design quality, 50 points, you guys. Design quality is 50 points. This is super important. Reasons why you might lose points for design quality include text to background color issues. So if you have colored text on like a multicolored photographic background and your text is hard to read, you're going to lose points for design quality. If you took small, low-resolution images and stretched them to make them bigger, resulting in them getting blurry and pixelated, you're going to lose points for design quality. If you, have what we call fontitis, where you have 3 or 4 different fonts in one design, and all your fonts and your typography is all different colors, you're going to lose points for design quality. If your masks and your selections are messy and you can see white pixels and background colors showing through, you're going to lose points for design quality. Okay, so you're working on making this clean and professional. And then professionalism. Are you spelling everything correctly? I've seen people lose 50 points on their final design because they had poor spelling and grammar on their project. Okay, 50 points is a huge hit. So please make sure everything in your design is spelled correctly. And that is going to give you the points for professionalism. Okay, so now you might be thinking, okay, I need to come up with a poster. I need to start getting some ideas. So a couple good places to go are Ad Council. Have you guys heard of the Ad Council? The Ad Council is an organization that makes a social issue campaign posters. And you can go through and you can look at all of their different campaigns for various issues, such as wildfire prevention, right? And you can even, you can go through and you can find examples of slogans that they've used. You can find examples of posters. So for instance, we can go on Google here and do an ad for Ad Council posters. And of course, you're not going to copy these, but you're going to use them as inspiration. Right? So here are some examples of Ad Council posters, and they might be inspiring to you. Right? This is a campaign against obesity. Alexandra, it's totally up to you. You can either choose something that you really care about, or you can choose something random. It's your project. You get to do what you want with it. But doing a search for Ad Council campaigns is a great way to get inspiration for what your poster can look like. Okay, another great place to go for inspiration, of course, is Pinterest. And hopefully you guys have used Pinterest before, because Pinterest is a really great place to go for inspiration. And you can do a search on Pinterest for social issue campaigns. Right, and what we're looking for is, something that's powerful, something that you can use as inspiration. Right, this is an interesting campaign, right? So go through, look at all of these different social issue campaigns, see if anything as far as a slogan, or something as far as a design is inspiring to you, and definitely use it. Now, when you are selecting photographic elements for your poster, you're probably likely going to use Google. Of course, you're more than welcome to use your own photographs that you have taken yourself. However, It's very important that your own photographs be high resolution, be crisp and clear and in focus, and professional looking, because you are likely going to use this poster for your portfolio, right? So you're going to use this poster for your portfolio, and you are likely going to, let's go to a raccoon. You're going to need to make sure that the imagery that you use is nice and large and high resolution. So make sure that you go to Google Images, of course, and make sure that you go to Tools, Usage Rights, and Labeled for Reuse with Modification. Labeled for Reuse with Modification. Next, you're going to go to Size, and then you're going to go to Large. Make sure that you use images that are nice and large and high quality and high resolution. The PX here is images that you have to log in to their website to download them. So Wikipedia is great because you don't have to log in to download the images. So we're looking for images that are at least 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels or larger. Before you download them, make sure you click View Image and view the image as large as possible. And this is the size that you are going to download. Do not download this small picture here, because this is just a preview image. And don't download this picture here, because that's just a thumbnail. You want to go view the image full screen before you download it by going to Control-Click, Save Image As. And now hit Save, okay? Okay, so that is how you're going to find your images. Of course, no copyright protected images will be used at all. Come up with your own design. You're going to get inspiration from pre-existing designs, but you're not going to straight up copy them, okay? Now let's go ahead and I'm going to first show you how not to make your poster. The sizes that you're going to be using, I'm going to go File, New, are 11 inches by 17 inches, and the resolution is going to be 300. We are going to be making our design for print. So eventually we're going to change the color mode to CMYK. But RGB color mode gives us access to more filters and adjustment layers. So we're going to work in RGB mode at first and then convert our project to CMYK later. So be sure to have a piece of paper handy and a pencil and be ready to jot down the process for converting your poster to CMYK. Now I'm going to go to OK. Now I'm going to make a new layer. And this is how not to make your poster, okay? I'm going to get my gradient tool out and make a gradient. And I have to put some pictures on here. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And I got that raccoon picture. So I'll put that on here. Put him over here. I have File, Place Embedded. What else do I got? Oh, I got the capybara picture. I'll put him over here. And File, Place. And what else do I have? I have a bunny picture. And that's kind of small, so I'm going to stretch and make it bigger. There we go. And now I got to put text on here. So I want something that contrasts with my red and green. So I'll get blue. And I'm going to get my text out and it'll say, be kind to animals. Okay, what do you guys think? Am I going to get an A on this assignment if I turn it in like this? Am I going to get any kind of good grade on this assignment? No way. And why not? What's wrong with this? Well, one, any like 5-year-old child could have made this, right? This does not show that you have taken 4 weeks of a college level Photoshop class, does it? This is not a good design. Not only does it not utilize any of the principles of design, but it also has a number of problems with it, things that I've talked about in class. Okay, so one, I brought in that bunny picture, and the bunny picture was very small. And so I stretched it to make it bigger. And look, that bunny is blurry and pixelated looking because I stretched it to make it bigger. Let's compare the bunny picture with the raccoon picture. See how crisp, and see how you can see all the fine hairs, and see how the edges are nice and crisp? On the bunny picture, see how the edges are very soft and fuzzy? And the eyes, especially look at the eyes, the shines in the eyes are soft and fuzzy, as opposed to the shine in the eyes on the raccoon that are sharp and crisp. This lets me as an instructor know that you have taken a small resolution picture and stretched it to make it bigger. Now let's take a look at the text. Of course, scripty text should be avoided if at all possible, because it is very hard to read. But this is a common mistake that I see from students sometimes. They will use a certain background color. And by the way, the choice of background here is terrible. You never want to use a gradient for your background, okay? Because it will result in your text being very hard to read. But two, I chose a mid-range green and red background, and I chose a mid-range color for the text. A mid-range background with a mid-range text color, they're too close in value. So when you look at these two colors together, you get that vibration effect happening in your eyes. And you can definitely tell if you were to throw on a black and white adjustment layer over this. See how the gray of the B in Be Kind is just a shade lighter than the gray of the background? That's because that, again, shows you that the value of this color is very, very close to the value of the background. And it's also very small and hard to read, so that's a problem. And two, these photos have just been placed randomly on the picture. There's no alignment. Your eye isn't guided through the design in any coherent way. And it doesn't show your Photoshop skills. It doesn't show your ability to composite or make masks or adjust the color of things. So let's start from scratch now. And I'm going to walk you through how to make your project this week in a way that is much more professional and will result in a much more appealing design that will get you a higher grade. And what we're going to be using to help us in laying out our imagery on here is the guides and the grids in Photoshop. Now, to make a guide, you're going to need to see the rulers on your design. So Command R, write that down if you guys haven't written it down already. Command or Control R if you're on a PC. Command or Control R brings up the rulers and makes them go away. We need to see the rulers in order to bring up these guides. Now, to bring up the guides, you click on the ruler and drag down. And what we're dragging down is this imaginary guideline that is going to help us lay out our design. And what I'm creating here is a 1/2 inch margin around my document. And I want to make sure all of my visual elements, my text, my photographs are all inside these guidelines. Okay, so I'm making sure all of my text and photo elements are inside these guidelines. This 1/4 inch margin represents the area of a print design that usually gets cut off by the printer. So it's very important that everything stay inside those guides. Next, I want to find the exact center of my document. So I'm going to bring up the grid. And the shortcut key to bring up the grid is Command apostrophe. Command apostrophe. Write that down. Command apostrophe. And the apostrophe is located right next to your enter or return key. Now, I already have my guides set up to find the exact center of my document. Let me show you how you can set up your guides to find the exact center of a document. So I'm going to go to Photoshop up at the top of the screen, Preferences, Guides, Grid, and Slices. Photoshop, Preferences, Guides, Grid, and Slices. This is where I have changed the colors of my guides and grids, and where I can also change the settings of my guides and grids. You might have noticed that my guides are slightly a different color than your guides. Here's where you can change the color. Right now I have my guides set to green, but I could easily make them to a purplish magenta. Okay, and then my grid, right now my grid is set to kind of this orange color. I can change my grid to a green color. How about that? Dark green. Now, I have my grid line set up to every 50%. That way it tells me where the exact center of my document is. But usually by default, you have it set to every 1 inch. Okay, so this is probably what your grid looks like when you first hit that Command apostrophe. Now we're going to change it to show us the exact center of the document. So right now my grid line is set to every 1 inch. Now I'm going to change where it says inches. I'm going to change it to percent. Make sure that you change it to percent, because if you put in 50 inches here, you're going to not see any lines show up on your document. It has to say 50%, not 50 inches, okay? 50%. And that 50% now has given me the exact center of my document. Now what I can do, because I don't want all of these extra grid lines, I can go to my guides and I can click on my ruler and I can trace my guides so that they're on the top of my grid. Right now I have used my guides to find the exact center of the document. By the way, I didn't place it right, so I need to use my move tool, which is the letter V. Write that down. The letter V is the move tool on your keyboard. And now, so I have my guides set up, and my grid I can make go away. And I can do that by hitting Command apostrophe, and now my grid is away, and I have just my guides up to help me design this piece. So we need to have 3 photo elements in our design. 3 photo elements. Remember, a photo element is a thing that is created with a camera, illustrations, graphics, clip art, maps, those are not photographic elements. Things created with the camera are photographic elements. So now I'm going to go to my custom shape tool, and I'm going to select the custom shape tool, and I'm going to make a little heart in the center. It doesn't matter what color you use for the shape that you're making. We're going to use this to composite our photo elements inside it, okay? So now I'm going to bring in some photos. So I'm going to go to File, Place, Embed to bring in some photos. First, enter or return to place my heart in there. And now I'm going to go to File, Place, Embedded. And I'm going to bring in those same little animals that we've used before. So there's a little capybara. Place him in there. I'm going to hold down the Shift button while I resize. Hold down the Shift button while I resize, and now hit Enter or Return. And I am going to place him inside that heart by using a clipping mask, which is something that we learned last week, a clipping mask. So I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button on my keyboard. Hold down the Alt or Option button on your keyboard. Write that down. Alt or Option button. And then I'm going to hover my cursor over the line between the photo layer and the shape layer, and I'm going to click. Now that capybara is inside that heart. I'm just using the Move tool, which is the letter V on your keyboard, the letter V on your keyboard, to move it into place. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in another element. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and this little guy. I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag. Check the top of your screen to make sure that both numbers are exactly the same. So I want to make sure that both the width and the height are exactly 44%. And now I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button and click on the line between the capybara layer and the dik-dik layer. Oh, I forgot to hit Enter or Return. One more time. Enter or Return, and then hold down the Alt or Option button and click on the line between the two pictures. Now, as you can see, my capybara is being covered up by my little antelope there. So I need to blend the two pictures together using masking, which is what you learned last week. So I'm going to go to my square with the circle inside of it, my square with the circle inside of it, and I'm going to go to my brush tool. And I want to make sure that my brush is at 100% opacity. I need to make sure that my blending mode is on normal. I need to increase the size of my brush so I make a nice blend. And now watch, I'm going to erase. And as long as I'm painting on my layer mask and not my image, I am doing good. So make sure that your layer mask has those little brackets around it, letting you know that it's selected. And you can see now we have created a nice blend between the two images. Now we're ready to add a third photographic element to the bottom of this heart. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. Where's our raccoon? There he is. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag, move him into place, the letter V to move, remember, Command T. And now, remember, enter or return to place. And now I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key, the Alt or Option key. I'm going to hover my cursor over the line between the two text layers, the two layers, photo layers, and I'm going to click. I just have to move him a little bit by using the letter V on my keyboard. Click letter V once, and now I can kind of move him into place so I can see his little nose there. There we go. And now I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to hit B for brush. And now watch, I can blend. So now I see all the animals together. What's kind of annoying is that there is a little bit of a purple gap there. So I'm going to click on my Dick layer mask and paint with white to fill that in. Ah, just the tiniest little gap. So I'm going to go to my raccoon layer and paint with black, white. There we go, that covered it. So now we have a nice seamless heart with our animals in it. Okay, now we're ready to lay out the text. So I'm going to click on my rulers to click and drag the guidelines out. And I want to make sure that my text lines up with the edge of the heart. So that's why I'm making these guidelines here. I'm going to make a new layer. And the font that I'm going to use for a poster is going to be a large sans serif font because it's easy to read and it's going to be big from far away. So I'm typing right now and nothing is showing up. Why? Because my text color is white. So I'm gonna, because of the project I was working on earlier, so I'm gonna hover over my text that you just typed, and I'm gonna change that white color. It honestly doesn't matter what color I choose because I can always change it later. Now my text is the right color, but it's obviously my text is too small right now. So I want to resize it, and I want to resize it so that the B lines up with the edge of the heart and the D on the other side lines up with the edge of the heart on the other side. So I'm going to get my move tool out. I'm going to hit Command T to transform. I'm going to hold down the shift button, click and drag, and see, getting that D to line up with that guideline there, getting that B to line up with this guideline here, dragging it down. There we go. And I'm going to make another layer. Get my text tool out. Bring my cursor to the line here. Go to my move tool, Command T, hold down the shift button, click and drag while holding down the shift button. And do you see what I've done here with these guidelines? The T in two animals is lining up the edge of the heart, and the edge of the heart is lining up with the letter B. And so the line from B to the edge of the heart down to the T for 2, it's a nice, clean, straight line. Same with the D to the edge of the heart to the S. So there's a structure to it, okay? And that structure is that grid is what's helping our design look professional, and using an important rule that you're gonna learn in all of your design classes, which is alignment. And you want things to be aligned, okay? Now I'm gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna go to my text tool, and I don't want to use Impact again. Impact is a very bold, large sans serif font. I want to use a font that is going to be lighter and not draw as much attention to itself. So I'm going to use something that feels like Impact and that will pair nicely with Impact, but won't compete with Impact. So Helvetica New Thin is a good one because it's a sans serif font like Impact is, but it's thin and it's light and it's not going to compete with Impact. So I've been on left align, and I'm going to center align because I'm making a website URL that's going to be at the bottom of my page, and it's going to be much smaller, and it's not going to be able to be big enough to reach these guidelines that I've made. So I'm going to go to my center align tool. I'm going to place my cursor right there on the center guideline that I drew. And I'm going to type www.bekind.org. I'm just making up a website URL because for your assignment, you have to have 3 distinct areas of text. And a website URL is a great thing to add to your poster to fulfill one of those requirements. Now I have 3 distinct areas of text. I have be kind, I have 2 animals, that's the second one, and then I have my website URL. And I can, right now, my website URL is still a little bit on the large side. It's competing a bit with the slogan. So I'm gonna highlight it and shrink it down a little bit. That's good. Now, the other problem here is I'm using black for the website URL and I'm using black for the slogan. Again, they're still competing a little bit. And I want to use really good visual hierarchy. I don't want my slogan to compete with my website URL. So I'm going to lower the opacity of my website URL by going over here to the layer panel and lowering the opacity. And so now it's a light gray color. And I no longer need my guidelines anymore, so I can hit Command semicolon. Write that down, you guys. Command semicolon to make my guidelines go away. Now we're going to do a couple other fancy things to this poster. I'm going to show you how to add textures and colors and vignettes and other effects to this. But if you were to turn in a poster that is this simple, that uses, it uses contrast, it uses alignment, it uses proximity, it uses repetition. This is an A quality poster here, okay? You're gonna get an A if you turn something in that looks like this, okay? You fulfilled the requirements. You're gonna get points for design quality, for professionalism, for all of that, okay? Let's just make sure that we save the files correctly. So we're always gonna save our native file format by going to File, Save As, and we're, of course, making a folder for all of our school projects on our desktop. And our native file format is not going to be turned in. We are just saving it so that we can use it for our capstone class when we take that in a few months. And you're going to use this naming convention for all of your assignments, DES104_Week4 assignment, your name.psd. And now we are going to save the PDF. So the first step with the PDF is we have to convert this image mode. At any point, if I go too fast, feel free to ask me to repeat myself. So I'm going to go to image at the top of the screen. I have to convert this to CMYK. So I'm going to go to image. Write this down, guys. Go to image, mode. See where it says RGB color? You're going to change it to CMYK. Write this down. Image, mode, CMYK. Image, mode, CMYK. Select don't flatten because you never want to flatten your layers. Don't rasterize. And then click OK. Now we have our image in CMYK, so it's almost ready for print. Now what we have to do is merge our layers together, but of course we don't want to delete our layers. We want to merge our layers together without deleting them. So we're going to do this. Write this down, guys. Shift, Command, Option, E. Shift, Command, Option, E. Those are 4 buttons that you're going to hold down all at the same time. If you are on a PC, you're going to type Shift, Control, Option, Alt. Sorry, Shift, Control, Alt, E. Shift, Control, Alt, E if you're on a PC. Shift, Command, Option, E if you're on a Mac. What that has done is it's merged all of our layers together without deleting them. This is going to help to ensure that your PDF shows up nicely in the gradebook. The next thing we have to do is rasterize all our layers. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to go up to Layer, rasterize all layers. Layer, write this down, guys. Layer, rasterize all layers. Write this down. Layer, rasterize all layers. Now we're ready to save the PDF. So to save the PDF for submission, it's one of the required file types for your submission this week. You're going to go to File, Save As, and in this format drop-down menu here, you're going to select Photoshop PDF. Photoshop PDF. Now this is really important. See where it says layers here? Uncheck layers. Make sure layers is not checked. And now you're going to hit save. Click OK. And now this is really important, guys. In these settings, you're going to select smallest file size. Smallest file size. And this is also really important. Make sure preserve Photoshop editing capabilities is not checked. Notice I am not checking preserve Photoshop editing capabilities. Do not check preserve Photoshop editing capabilities. And now I'm going to hit save PDF. And that PDF is what you're going to turn in. Now we need to save a version of this for the web. This is going to involve converting it back to RGB format and shrinking it down. So write this down, guys. And if I go too fast at any point, just type in the chat, can you repeat that? And I'll be more than happy to repeat it. So now I'm going to go to Image, Mode, RGB. Image, Mode, RGB. And I'm going to convert it back to RGB. And I'm going to say don't flatten. Now I have to shrink this down. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, Image, Image Size. And now this is really important. There's a process here. We have to change the resolution first. So write that down. Number 1, circle it. Change resolution to 72. Change resolution to 72. And it has to be in this order. You have to change the resolution first before you change the size. Okay? You have to change the resolution first before you change the size. Now where it says width here, we're going to change the width to 500. And see, we've constrained the proportions, meaning there's a lock between the width and the height. So the height changed as well. The height changed to 773. If your height does not change as well, you're going to result in a very stretched looking image, which is going to be bad. And now I'm going to click OK. Now you may be thinking, wow, this looks really, really small. But look, we are zoomed out to 25%. If you hit Command plus sign, Command plus sign, Command plus sign, Command plus sign, we're now at 100%. And it's actually not that small. Now we're ready to save this as a JPEG as per required. So I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for Web. File, Export, write this down. File, Export, Save for Web. And JPEG medium, JPEG high, it's fine. As long as the final JPEG is under 100 kilobytes, you are good. And now I'm going to go to Save. And that JPEG, and we are saving this to our schoolwork folder, and I'm hitting Save. So now you have the JPEG and the PDF, which you're going to be turning in for your project. Any questions so far on anything that I've gone over? I am going to talk a little bit about typography because that is a very important part of this week's assignment. And you may have been wondering why I chose that impact font for my poster. And I think this little short video is going to explain a lot about typography and what these different fonts are and what they mean that maybe you haven't thought about before. It's also going to give you a chance to get a drink of water because as you can tell, my throat is killing me right now. So watch this short video. It's going to be very, very inspiring as far as what fonts you can use for your poster. And then I'll show you some fancy things that you can do on this. Changing colors, changing effects, making vignettes, making textures, all of that.
Type is power. The power to express words and ideas visually. It's timeless, but always changing. And that's what we're going to explore. Most people agree that the creator of typography was a German man named Johannes Gutenberg, and yes, he wore a hat like that. Before Gutenberg came along and revolutionized the world of communication, books needed to be scribed by hand, usually by monks, which was very time-consuming and expensive. So Gutenberg created blackletter, the first ever typeface, modeled after the writing of the scribes. Blackletter has thick vertical lines and thin horizontal connectors, which made it great for scribing, but it looked very dense and squished together when printed. Something needed to change. Enter Roman type. This particular typeface is Cambria, which you're probably used to seeing on your word processor, but the first ever Roman typeface was created in the 15th century by the Frenchman Nicolas Jenson. This is his typeface right here. Jenson worked mainly in Venice, Italy, and was inspired by the lettering found on ancient Roman buildings. His letter forms were based on straight lines and regular curves. This made them very clear and legible compared to the dense darkness of blackletter. This legible new typeface was an instant success, and quickly spread across Europe, riding on the coattails of the Renaissance. The next major innovation in typography after Roman letters was italics, which are like slanted and stylized versions of Roman type. They were created in the late 15th century by Aldus Manutius from Italy as a way of fitting more letters onto the page and saving money. Now we use italics interspersed in Roman type for emphasis. Aldus Manutius also created the modern comma and semicolon, but that's another story. Type development stayed fairly stagnant until the 18th century in England when William Caslon created a typeface that set a new standard for legibility. While it wasn't anything radical, it was just what the world was looking for. The style of Caslon's typeface is now referred to as Old Style. A few decades later, another Brit named John Baskerville created a new variety of typeface, which we call transitional. Later still, a Frenchman named Didot and an Italian named Bodoni created typefaces that we have classified as modern. Most serif typefaces fit into one of these three categories, but what does each category mean? An old-style typeface has letters that have thick serifs and low contrast between thick and thin strokes. A transitional typeface has letters with thinner serifs and a higher contrast between thick and thin strokes. And a modern typeface has letters with very thin serifs and extreme contrast between thick and thin strokes. Next, William Caslon's great-grandson, named William Caslon IV, got sick of all of these serifs, so he decided to remove them entirely and made a new kind of typeface called a sans serif. It didn't catch on immediately, but would eventually get really big. During the Second Industrial Revolution, advertising created a need for new typefaces. Letters were made taller and wider, mainly used in large sizes on posters and billboards. Things got pretty weird, but one happy result of all of this experimentation is Egyptian, or slab serif. It has really thick serifs and is usually used for titles. As a backlash to the complexity found in typefaces of the 19th century, the early 20th century brought something simple. Paul Renner from Germany created a typeface called Futura, and it was based on simple geometric shapes. This is called the geometric sans. Around the same time, a British man named Eric Gill created a typeface called Gill Sans that was similar to a geometric sans, but with gentler, more natural curves, and this is called a humanist sans. The next major step in the world of sans serifs happened in Switzerland in 1957 with the introduction of Helvetica. It has simple curves and is available in many different weights, and some would call it the world's favorite typeface. The world of typography changed forever with the introduction of the computer. There were a few difficult years of crude pixel type due to the primitive screen technology. But then technology evolved and computers began to allow for the creation of thousands of beautiful typefaces. And the odd, dud. But now anyone has the freedom to create their own unique typeface. And that is the history of typography.
Alrighty, guys. So now you know probably a little bit more about those fonts that you often see when you're scrolling through Photoshop and you're trying to figure out what sort of typeface you'll use for your project. Now you know what is meant by Helvetica and Gill Sans, Nito, and you know where those come from. So the reason I chose this bold, thick sans serif font for my project is because it's easy to see from far away and it's great for a poster. Now you're welcome to play with all of these fonts, look through, scroll through, and see if any others might be appropriate for a poster. Things that you'll probably want to stay away from are thin serif fonts and scripty fonts and decorative fonts such as Papyrus or Comic Sans or Edwardian script. Anything that draws too much attention to itself. Bold, thick sans serif fonts are really going to be ideal for this project. Now, I have just converted this project to a small, low-resolution JPEG. And if I were to exit out of Photoshop at this point, I would no longer have that large, high-resolution 300 dpi for Photoshop file anymore. It would be gone. So before I save this project, or before I exit out of Photoshop, I need to make sure that I step backwards and revert to my old 300 dpi version of this project. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key, Alt or Option, hold down the Command key or Control if you're on a PC, and the letter Z. Alt, Option, Command, Z. And see, now I have a larger project, so I got rid of that resize that I did. I also need to get rid of the merged layer that I made. So I'm going to hit Alt, Option, Command, Z again. And that actually got rid of the rasterized typography that I made. So it had rasterized all my layers. Now I've gotten rid of that rasterization. And now Alt, Option, Command, Z again. I'm just undoing. And now I got rid of that merged layer. So now I have my project back to the way it was before I saved that JPEG, nice and large and full resolution. Now I can hit Command S to save, and I know I'm saving a large, high-resolution version of this project. Now's the time where we can experiment with some different effects and some different looks for a project. And this is something that I do in real life when I'm working on projects for clients. I'll do a number of different versions, different colors, different effects on it, and then I'll give the client a contact sheet full of different variations, and then the client can pick which one they like the best. For instance, this is a project that I just worked on yesterday, over the weekend. For someone, it's a book cover, and this is the initial variations I gave them. So I made a contact sheet with their book cover illustration with a number of different color schemes and fonts, and then they get to pick which one they like the best. And then I'll send them another contact sheet full of even more, font variations using the color scheme that they selected, so that they can then choose the different fonts that they want for the project. So with this one, I think it would look great with a vignette. And a vignette is just a simple way to darken the corners, to make the corners kind of darker and then the center lighter, so it kind of feels like the focal point is more towards the center of the document. So I'm going to do that by making a new layer. And it's actually really easy to make a vignette. I'll show you a couple different ways. One way is just to get a very large brush. So I'm using a large, soft, see my hardness is at 0%. Large, soft brush, and I'm just dusting the corners with my paintbrush, like so. And this kind of creates like a very more organic looking vignette. So just darken the corners, and now it's really, really dark. So I'm just gonna lighten the painting I did by lowering the opacity. And see, now we have just kind of a nice little subtle shading in the corners, and the focus is more on the center. Another way that we can do this is by making a gradient. So you can go to the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other, and click on the gradient option. And we're going to change the style to radial, and we're going to reverse it. And I'm going to increase the scale and do something like that. There we go. And I'll just kind of lower the opacity just a little bit. Right? So that's one kind of vignette. And this is another. I personally like this one better because I like how the center is a little bit more light. Now, another thing that we can do is throw a texture over the whole document. And this kind of gives it a little bit more of a grungy, a vintagey look to it. So first step is to make a new layer. And I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And I'm going to go to my paper texture. This one here. And you can find paper textures anywhere. You can find them on Google. You can make them yourself just by photographing some interesting crinkled up paper. But I'm just going to place a texture over this document. Just a photo of an interesting texture. Just place it over the document like this. Enter or return to place it. And now I'm going to use, I'm going to change the blending mode so that the texture shows through. So right now I have my amber paper texture layer selected. I'm going to go to the layers drop-down menu and change it to overlay. And see, by changing this to overlay, I have this cool kind of texture effect in the center, or in the darkness there. In the center, it's lighter. There's a little texture showing through on the animals. There's a little texture showing through in the black there, but it's kind of nice and subtle. Another way that we can make this look is by using hard light. Hard light's going to make that texture show up not just in the shadows and in the midtones, but in the highlights as well. The result is much more dramatic. So I would recommend, if you use hard light, lower the opacity a lot. And see, now it's kind of, we can see a little bit of the texture before, after, but it's not overwhelming. And now on each of your layers, whether they're text or images, you can apply layer styles. And layer styles can come up if you just double click on the blank blue area that is next to a layer. Just double click on the blank blue area next to a layer. And on this heart layer here, I'm going to add a drop shadow. Isn't that cool? And the drop shadow I had previously used had a lot of noise. See that noise slider there? So the noise slider makes it look kind of speckly, which is kind of cool. I'm just going to reduce the noise, and so now instead of being speckly, it's kind of smooth. And I'll angle it slightly, and maybe I'll lower the opacity so it's not quite so dark, right? So that's a little drop shadow. We can also add a bevel and emboss. And you can see the bevel and emboss, you know, you can make it really extreme like that, but that looks not so good. So a little subtle bevel and emboss might be kind of nice. And maybe just lower the opacity a little bit. So it's a little bit, so it's subtle. And another thing you can do is color overlay. Now, if you leave the color overlay on normal, you know, you're just going to see the color. You're not going to see the photos underneath. But if you change the blending mode to color, it will apply that color to the photo and colorize the photo, which can be an interesting result. Different blending modes will give you a different effect. So another interesting one is overlay. It's a little bit more high contrast. Also hard light if you lower the opacity. That's hard light with the lower opacity. I personally like color, and I'll increase the opacity up to 100%. And now I'll click OK. And see, that's kind of nice, isn't it? And you can apply that same sort of layer effect to the text as well. So let's say I wanted to change the color of the text. I just double click on the blank blue area next to the layer over here in the layer panel. I'll choose color overlay, and this time instead of pink, I'll choose something that contrasts, something kind of bluish green, just kind of nice. And I'll do the same thing here. So I go to color overlay, and it's really handy because it will automatically choose the color that you had already chosen. And finally, you are welcome to play with adjustment layers on this poster. So adjustment layers are found in the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other at the bottom of the layer panel. And one that is really fun to play with that I use a lot in my personal projects is hue saturation. And if you click on hue saturation, it makes an adjustment layer over your project. And then you can move the slider around, and you can see what your design will look like if you were to change the colors. So you can scroll through here and you can see, oh, this might look kind of cool if that heart was kind of more pinkish or more purplish or bluish or greenish, like that. You can also click colorize and make your whole project monochromatic, which can also be kind of cool. Alrighty, and then make sure that after you've made all these changes that you hit save, okay? And that you save the JPEG and the PDF. So really important, you don't want to accidentally shrink your native file. Since we are taking that PSD file and we're shrinking it down to 500 pixels on its shortest side and making it 72 DPI, you really want to make sure after you save that JPEG to hit Alt-Command-Z, Alt-Command-Z, Alt-Command-Z to step back until you get your full resolution project before you exit out of Photoshop, okay? So don't accidentally shrink down that PSD file, that native file. So contrast. Contrast is an important element of design that you guys are going to be graded on. Good contrast means that your text is easy to read your images are clear. And this usually means that you have a very light, bright color against a very, very dark, dark background, or you have a very, very dark, dark text against a very, very light, light background. You can clearly see on the left side of your screen the example of good contrast. Poor contrast is when the value of the foreground and background color are nearly identical. This usually is because you chose a mid-range value color for your background and a mid-range value color for your foreground. And it doesn't matter what colors you chose, those values are so close together that you're going to result in getting that blurry vibration effect happening in your eyes. So repetition. Repetition is a really important aspect of design, and we want to see it in your projects. Repetition means using the same font throughout your design. So if you use a sans serif font for your slogan, use a sans serif font for your website URL. If you use one color for your text, use that same color on all of your text. You don't want to have what's called fontitis, where you have a bunch of different fonts on your design that are a bunch of different colors. You also want to be consistent in your use of imagery and colors, right? You want to have a consistent color scheme. You want to have consistent shapes. So if you use, rounded edge shapes, that means like your whole design should have rounded edge shapes, so it's consistent. Repetition creates consistency. Alignment. So alignment is what I spent about 30 minutes on at the beginning of this class. We want to see that slogan, line up nicely and create a nice vertical line with the edge of your image. And the same with the text on the other side. You want to create a nice vertical line. You don't want to have your eye, jutting in, having you don't want to have ragged margins. You want to have nice, crisp, clean margins where everything is lining up. Notice how the L lines up with the I. Notice how the edge of the H lines up with the edge of the subtext here. Alignment. And proximity. So on my poster with the heart, I used proximity. I brought all the photo elements into the center. I brought them all together inside the heart. I put the slogan very close to the heart and the website URL far from the heart, so that it created, a nice clean focal point in the center of my document. And then that website URL was secondary, right? So think about proximity. Think about putting similar elements together, grouping things together, because it makes things more readable. So a good strategy for success with your design this week is laying out your grid, using guides and grids, but finding the center of your design, placing that central focal point in the center, using margins, using that grid to help you create alignment, using symmetrical or asymmetrical balance. So in this design here that I made, this is an example of symmetrical balance. But I can easily convert this into an asymmetrical design by using the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds states that you should imagine your design. I'm going to have to get rid of these grids here for a second, and I'll make a new rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds states that you should imagine that your canvas is divided up into 3 vertical sections and 3 horizontal sections. Right, so this is what 3 vertical sections would look like. I'm just kind of roughly guesstimating where they are. And this is what 3 horizontal sections would look like. And what you can do with the rule of thirds is place your focal point on one of those intersecting points. So I'll place this heart here, and I'll kind of rotate it slightly to create asymmetrical balance. So that means then I have to fill up the rest of my composition. like so. And now that is an example of an asymmetrical composition. The focal point is right here with our heart. And then, you know, the rest of the composition is balanced out here by the text, okay? So symmetrical versus asymmetrical. Think about what you want to use for your design. And visual hierarchy. So visual hierarchy is the idea that you have one element, in my case it's the heart, because the heart is big, the heart has pictures in it, the heart is most visually interesting. And then everything else is secondary to that, okay? So you don't want to have anything that's competing with your main focal point. So a good strategy for your poster, keep it simple. If there's an element in your poster that can be taken away, then it probably should be. Try your design in several different colors with several different fonts and see, you know, so you can experiment with what those different looks and those different colors and what those different fonts might look like. And consider outputting all of your variations into a contact sheet. Now, this is optional, not something that's required, but something that you will definitely do in future classes. And it's really, really easy to do. So I had, now this is going to be my second version of my project. So I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for Web, and in my folder, JPEG High, I'll save this as a version 2. And then maybe I'll do one more that's in a different color scheme. I'll use, this time I'll use a gradient map just for kicks. And gradient maps are fun. I'm gonna reverse that. And maybe I'm just gonna add one more stop. It's super light yellow. That's kind of nice. And this will be version 3. So I'm gonna go File, Export, Save for Web. Again, this is not required, but you'll see how interesting it is to look at a bunch of different designs side by side. Now let's make a contact sheet. So I'm going to go to File, Automate, Contact Sheet, File, Automate, Contact Sheet. And I'm going to browse for my files. And let's see, we have this guy is one. And these two are the others. And now I get to choose which orientation I want things in. So let's say I'll have one column and I'll have 3 rows. So I can just look at them all stacked up on top of each other. And then I'm gonna go, okay. And the cool thing about a contact sheet is it is going to place those 3 versions of your document side by side. And you can look at them all just like this on one sheet, and you get to pick which one you like the best, or send this to clients so they can pick which one they like the best. Pretty cool, right? So that is contact sheet. Any questions so far on anything that I've talked about, or the poster or the project or anything at all? Because I also want to talk about getting a job. Since you guys are going to be putting all of these projects that you've made into a portfolio, and you're going to be using this portfolio to get a job, it's a good idea for you to think about what is going to be expected of you when you go to your first job interview, and what kind of things you'll want to bring to your job interview when you are applying for that first graphic design job. And it's important to remember that this field is highly competitive, with a lot of graduates from a lot of really top schools, all competing for, a few number of seats. So I put together a little video here on how you can stand out amongst the crowd and how your interview and your portfolio pieces can make more of an impact.
Hey you guys, so I want to do a little show and tell with you all today. I have some things that I bring to interviews, and I hope that you guys get these various items made and so that you can bring them to your interviews and have a lot of success on your job search. So this first thing I'm going to show you is what I call the Leave Behind portfolio. There you go. And this is what I get printed at lulu.com, and it has all of my artwork in it, my favorite artwork, let's say that. And this is then something that I can leave with the client or employer that I'm interviewing with. They're really inexpensive. They're between $10 and $20 for each one to get printed. And so you can get a stack of these made. 50 of them, take a look. And then when you go on job interviews, you can leave this with the people that you're interviewing with. And even if they don't hire you, maybe they find someone else whose style is a little bit better fit for their project, they're going to have another project come up. And they're going to remember you because this is going to sit on their shelf. It's way too nice to throw away. And they'll think, oh, that person's style is a much better fit for this project that we're working on. So they're going to give you a call, and this is just a great way to stay in someone's memory by leaving these with the people that you interview with. Now, another thing I get made are these postcards, and I get these made at overnightprints.com. On one side, let's see, it has my contact info, and on the other side it has my artwork. And these are nice and big and colorful, and so they're not going to be stuffed into someone's purse and forgotten about. These might go on someone's fridge or on someone's bulletin board in their office. And then when they have a project come up, they're going to look at your artwork hanging there, and they're going to give you a call. So get a bunch of these made, overnightprints.com. Really inexpensive, and you can get the rounded edges, you can get the shiny on one side, the matte on the other side, and these will be something that you will use to stay in someone's mind when they're hiring for projects. Now, I also have my actual big printed, carrying case portfolio that has all of my artwork mounted on these, I guess you could say, kind of hard mat board or cardstock. I don't print these and make them myself. I get all of my artwork together on a disc or a CD, and then when I'm ready to get it printed, I'll go to Kinko's or Staples, and I just ask them to print it and mount it on black mat board and cut it, so it's all nice and pretty. And all of my pieces together to get printed and mounted only costed like $100. And you have these forever, and as you make art that gets better and better, you can start to throw away or give away the pieces that you don't need anymore and replace them with the pieces that you do like. And yeah, so just carry this in a little carrying case, when you go to your interviews. Take out each of these pieces individually and pass them around the table with the people that you're interviewing with so that they can look at them up close, and they can pass them and talk about them with their colleagues and everything. And then the next thing is, of course, your resume, and you're going to want to get some nice, clean, good-looking resume paper. Staples, Kinko's, you can get this a lot of places. And this is a resume paper that has texture to it, and it's got some thickness to it, and you want to print out tons of copies of your resume, because you're going to go from job interview to job interview. You're going to be interviewed by between 3 and 5 other people, and you want to just be able to whip out your resume, and you want to be able to have lots of resumes available whenever you need to hand it to people. And the last thing, I have these little mugs that I got made at Zazzle.com. And these are like little leave behind presents. So every job interview you go on, you leave a little present with the person that you're interviewing with. And this is going to stay on their desk. This is going to be used for drinking out of, or used as a little container for people's pens. And this is just another way to stay in someone's memory, and then when a project comes up and your style kind of fits with that project, they'll give you a call. You can also get little mouse pads made, and you can give those away during your interview. And periodically during holidays like Halloween, New Year's, you could just send out these little presents to different companies that you've interviewed with, and they're going to have another little present from you, and another way to kind of stay in their mind and on their radar when a project comes up that your style fits.
Alrighty. So what I want to do is leave the rest of this class open to answering any questions or giving you any one-on-one help or additional info that you might need for any of your assignments. If not, if you guys are good, if you guys got all the information that you need and you're ready to finish up the course, then you are good to go. So it's totally up to you. If you have any questions or want me to go over anything, I'm here for you. If not, you are free to go. Any questions at all? Need help with anything at all? So you guys are good? You know everything that's needed for all of your assignments coming up this week? Wow, okay. Usually I have a bunch of questions from the students at the end of our final class session. So what I will do then is finish up with another little inspiring video that I think you guys are going to like a whole lot, that can give you some ideas on things that you can do for your poster as far as typography. So this is a little typography inspiration.
Typefaces aren't merely about forms, they're about design systems. They have to do with the way things relate to one another.
It's the joy of what happens with color and form and information.
Fonts are clothes in a sense. They help visually externalize your identity to the world.
It's about tension, it's about spatial arrangement, it's about the texture, and it's about the dynamics.
Typefaces are not toys. They're tools. They're designed to solve problems. Some people say that there are two kinds of type designers. There are those whose voice is always detectable in the work they do, and those whose voice is never detectable in the work they do. Tobias and I try to conceal our handiwork in typefaces. And I would love people to recognize our work, to respond to it in some emotional way, but again, for it to play second fiddle to the message.
A lot of the conversations that we have would sound kind of bizarre. We're trying to figure out, like, what is the gray flannel suit version of this form?
Or it's like, this is too Tom and Jerry. It needs to be more Don Draper. It's just
like, and we know exactly what we're talking about.
Makes sense.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Letters are everywhere, and that's one of the things that makes typography so interesting to people these days.
It's such a pervasive part of our day. You need type again and again and again to get through the day, to live your life.
I landed in the music industry in the 70s. It was completely lucky. I loved record covers. I thought there was no object more wonderful than a record cover. The albums that people would know were things like Bruce Springsteen, Darkness at the Edge of Town, or the Boston album. But I was more interested in typography. So I used to experiment with typography on jazz albums. I determine how I design something based on the audience and what the audience will bear. Evoke the response you want while pushing the audience to see something perhaps in a new way. My goal when I started designing for the public theater was to create a visual language as opposed to a logo for a theater. And Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk was the best use of that visual language because it used this wood type in a very provocative way. It was type that talked to you, it was type that rapped, it was type that tapped. It's the only Broadway show that didn't have a logo. Everything's about identity. Everything is about expressing individuality of places, businesses, organizations, people. I think the ultimate goal is to have as much uniqueness and understanding in every communication that you can have.
Quite weirdly, I always think typography is a little bit like a carpet. I kind of look at it from the point of view of texture and how readable that texture actually is. One of our clients is Studio Museum in Harlem. I had thought about Invisible Man. He talks about the sense of identity as an African American and being black, the idea of being noticed and unnoticed. What we did was create a form similar to a stealth bomber. I took some text and I applied it to a paper format, utilizing optical illusion, and that's how stealth became whole. It's not a normal poster which is flat. It's very sculptural. UCLA came to me and asked us to look at their poster series. We utilized a standard font and we used Fedora and manipulated them through code into irregular, dynamic structures which were still fonts. You need attractors. Too much text. There's not enough textual form and tension and dynamics. And so when you see a poster that is entirely different to other posters that you see around you, then you're going to be attracted to it, either whether you hate it or you like it. And it's basically doing its job.
If you look back 200 years, infographics were being used to map cholera cases in London. Fast forward, you have magazines like Wired putting an emphasis on infographics. Wired influences publications like Good, who take this online. So the Opportunity Gap is a piece that we did for Good magazine. It's really ultimately about education. It's about how poverty rates and access to healthcare creates a discrepancy in the opportunities available to students of different races. The most challenging part of working on an infographic is taking all of the available data and deciding what is the most important bit of information that we need to communicate. Infographics are just about the typography getting out of the way of the message.
Our process is to be able to distill the information to a very key point. You try to be as expressive as you can possibly be with the limitations you have.
Infographics are like top science. It's fun
and friendly.
It's interesting, it's absorbing.
Because of the computer, people are really aware of typography like they've never been before.
Typography is kind of finally free on the web.
It is amazing that everybody can do this. The tools are there. They're on your phone, which is extraordinary.
It's just something that should be enjoyed.
Words have meaning and type has spirit, and the combination is spectacular.
All right, you guys, so hopefully you have lots of inspiration for your typography. And I'm so glad that you guys have been my students during these last 4 weeks of Photoshop, and I know you're going to come up with amazing projects, and I can't wait to see them. So please do email me at any point during this week if you have any questions at all about anything. Please do come to my multi-session on tomorrow at 5, and I will be there. I will assist you with your assignments and show me your work before you turn it in, and then get your assignments turned in on Tuesday so that you can enjoy your holiday Thanksgiving season. And remember that Saturday, midnight Mountain Time, is the hard deadline for the class, and if you are in the middle of uploading your work and that midnight deadline rolls around, you will no longer be able to upload your work and you will get a 0 on your assignment, and that would be bad. That's it. I will see you guys in the classroom.